Hey everyone, I'm Liz Fairy and today I'm going to show you how I made these crochet roses. Some things you'll need for this tutorial are a crochet hook, I'll be using a size E, a pair of scissors, a yarn needle. You'll also need yarn for the petals and leaves. You can use pretty much any yarn for this project, but bear in mind that the rose will be bigger if you use a thicker yarn and smaller if you use a thinner yarn. I'll be using Aran weight yarn for this tutorial to make it easier to see what I'm doing. I have Cherry Red from Red Heart Super Saver for the petals and Hunter Green for the leaves and stem, but you can use any color yarn you choose. If you like, you could use craft wire to make a wire skeleton for your rose so that it stands up better. I'll also make some wire skeletons for the branches and leaves, which I'll show you how to do later in the video. And if you like, you could also purchase the written pattern for this rose in my Ravelry store. You can find the link in the description below. First I'm going to create a slip knot using my red yarn. Then I'm going to chain 6, and slip stitch to the first stitch to form a ring. Then I'll create 2 petals in the ring, so I'll chain 2, then onto the ring I'm going to double crochet 3 times. Then I'll chain 2 and slip stitch to the ring. And I'm going to repeat that to create another petal, so chain 2. Then onto the ring, double crochet 3. Then chain 2 and slip stitch to the ring. Next I'm going to create the foundation for my next row of petals. To do this, I'm going to work back around the same ring that I used as the foundation for the last row of petals. First I'm going to slip stitch along the back of the work until I get to where I want the first petal to begin, about halfway across the first petal. So I'm going to slip stitch around the foundation ring that I worked into in the previous row, in between the stitches of the first petal. So I'll place my first slip stitch here, between the chain 2 and the first double crochet of the first petal around the ring. Then I'll place another slip stitch around the ring in between the first and second double crochet of the first petal, right here. And now I'm at the middle of the petal. So for the next row of petal foundation, I'm going to chain 4, then I'm going to single crochet, working around the ring again in between the second and third stitch of the second petal, so that this petal will end about halfway between the next petal of the previous row. So I'll single crochet here between the first and second double crochet of the next petal. Then I'll create my next petal foundation. So chain 4, then I'm going to single crochet around the first slip stitch that I made in this row. If you wanted to just make 2 petals in this next row, you would single crochet in the next slip stitch instead, and then begin working your petals, but I actually want to create an extra petal in this row. So I'm going to chain 4 again, and single crochet around the second slip stitch of this row to create an extra petal foundation. Now I'm ready to create my petals. Into each of the chain 4 spaces, I'm going to slip stitch, then chain 2. Then I'll double crochet 1. Then treble crochet 2. To treble crochet, I'll yarn over twice, pull up a loop, pull a loop through 2 loops on my hook, pull another loop through the next 2 loops, then another loop through the next 2 loops. So here's the first treble. I'm going to make 1 more. Then double crochet 1, chain 2, and slip stitch. And I'm going to do that for every chain 4 space. Now I'm going to create another row of foundation for the next row of petals. And I'm going to do this in the same way. I'll slip stitch around the foundation for the first petal of the previous row until I get to the middle of the petal, in between the stitches of the petal. This time I'll slip stitch 3. Then to make the next foundation, I'll chain 5, and single crochet around the foundation of the next petal in the middle. And I'll repeat that to make the remaining 2 foundations for my next 2 petals. So chain 5 and single crochet around the foundation of the next petal in the middle, then for my last petal foundation I'll chain 5, and single crochet into the 3rd slip stitch that I made at the beginning of this row, so that this petal foundation ends at the middle of the first petal. Again though, if you wanted to add another petal, you could single crochet in the first slip stitch of the row instead, then chain 5 more for another petal foundation, and single crochet in the last slip stitch to end the row. But for this flower, I'm just going to continue to make 3 petals per row to keep it simple. Now I'll create the next row of petals. I'll do this in the same way, except I'll make the petals of this row slightly larger. So into the chain 5 space, I'm going to slip stitch, then chain 2. Then double crochet 2. Treble crochet 2. then double crochet 2, chain 2, and slip stitch. And I'm going to repeat that in the remaining chain 5 spaces to create 3 petals total. And then I'll create another foundation row for the next set of petals, in the same way as before. This time I'll slip stitch 4 times around the petal foundation until I get to the middle of the first petal of the previous row. And for this row of petals, I'll chain 6 for my petal foundation. Then I'll single crochet in the middle of the second petal, then chain 6 more, single crochet in the middle of the next petal, then chain 6, and single crochet in the 4th slip stitch of this row, so that the last petal ends at the middle of the first petal. Then I'll create another row of petals. This is going to be my last row of petals, but if you like, you can use the same technique to create more rows of petals. So into each chain 6, I'm going to slip stitch, chain 2, double crochet 1, treble crochet 2, then I'll double treble crochet 2. To double treble crochet, I'm just going to add an extra yarn over and an extra pull through 2 to my stitch. So I'll yarn over 3 times. Then pull up a loop. Then pull through 2 loops 4 times. There's 1 double treble, so I'll do 1 more. Then treble crochet 2, double crochet 1, chain 2, and slip stitch. And I'll repeat that in the remaining chain 6s to finish the row. Next I'm going to create the bottoms of the outer layer of petals using a 10-post treble crochet cluster. First I'll slip stitch to the first stitch of the previous row, then chain 2. So now I need to create a 10-post treble crochet cluster around the posts of each stitch of the first petal. That means I'll be leaving each stitch open on my hook until I have 10 total posts, one for each stitch of the last petal, which I'm going to crochet together. So first I'll yarn over 2 times, as though I'm making a normal treble crochet. Then pull up a loop around the post of the first stitch of the petal. Pull a loop through 2 of the loops on the hook, then pull another loop through the next 2 loops on the hook. Leave the last loop on the hook. Then repeat that until one stitch of the cluster is worked onto each post of the petal stitches. There should be 11 loops total remaining on the hook. Okay, I finished my first cluster of stitches, and now I have 11 total loops on the hook. To finish the stitch, I'm going to pull a loop through all the loops on the hook. Then I'll chain 2 to go in between the petals. And I'll repeat that for the remaining petals. At the end of the last petal, I'll chain 2 again. Then I'll slip stitch to the first treble crochet cluster I made to end the work. Then I'm going to cut off my yarn and sew in the end. So that completes the petals.